Hello and welcome back to Planet Coaster. I'm MK Plays and today we're continuing with our Mario Galaxy ride. Oh, I'm so excited for this episode. I've honestly not had this much fun in Planet Coaster for a while. I always get super excited when I first start a project, but it's not too long before I begin to get slightly bored. Creating this COMET Observatory honestly made me feel like how I did back when I started the series. I found it so fun. Granted, it did take me about 5 hours to finish this room, but I've never been more proud of something. Yes, it's not the entire COMET Observatory, but I'm super happy with how it has turned out. Before we get into the details, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing. It really supports me. So to start, I began working on the walkway that Mario spawns on when you first load up the game. I think the pieces I used for the border were the Aztec ones, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I had a reference image up whilst building this spaceship and I tried my best to do it justice. I used the flat castle roof as the floor tiles, and then used art shapes to get that nice aqua-coloured flooring on either side of the walkway. I also used some rectangles that I made a circle out of to add some details to the floor. I used a lot of art shapes within this entire build, but they're honestly so flexible they could be used for anything. You'll see me making a bunch of different sized rings which I'll end up using at some point. I then created the pattern on the walkway. Again, you guessed it, using art shapes. It's like this yellow pattern on either side that joins into a circle in the middle. When I was finished, I changed the colour of the floor to be purple and added lights on both sides of the walkway. And at this point, I was getting quite excited. I remember thinking, holy crap, this is actually starting to look quite good. And it's funny because I initially never planned to build the COMET Observatory. I was just going to put it on a billboard or something. But I'm really glad I didn't choose the easy way out. It can be so tempting sometimes though. Especially with me wanting to finish this before Planet Coaster 2 comes out and it's literally like around the corner. So the pressure is on. So after I was happy with this part of the build, I worked on the coaster layout a little bit. So the plan is we leave the space giant galaxy, have a couple of airtime hills and then end up in the observatory. I've included another room between this build and the last galaxy. It's basically a billboard of the COMET Observatory to show it in the distance before we see it in the flesh. We go through some cool coloured rings and boost into a loop, which ends with a perfect view of the COMET Observatory. I use some colourable mist throughout these rooms to give some northern light effects, or some nebula effects, just to break up all the black panels a little bit more. And of course, I added a rosalina from the Steam Workshop, as well as plenty of lumas. After all, she is mother. Okay, let's chat about Planet Coaster 2 for a second. I am beyond excited to play it day one. So apparently we've had all the Frontiers deep dives already, and the only one left is right before release day. Even though I'm super excited with the new game, I am feeling like it's lacking a little bit in terms of welcomed surprises. It definitely feels like we're not being shown certain things yet, but I don't know, it feels like you'd want to show the biggest aspects of what sets this game apart from the first game. Enough to entice people to buy it. Of course water parks are amazing, but I'm more excited to try out darker interiors, which would make building dark rides so much better. We've seen a glimpse of it, but nothing too much. I'm also loving the different track elements, like the drop tracks. Still no confirmation of transfer tracks though, but honestly, even though I'm a coaster nerd, I don't necessarily need it, you can just fake it like most people do anyways. There's also something fishy with the coaster stations. There is confirmation of conveyor belt stations, so that's when the ride never fully stops, it just slows down while guests get on and off, which is great. But we've not actually seen it. I'll be very surprised if there aren't other cool stations and more customization options. After all, Frontier have been listening to what everyone wants, and have included so much of our wish lists. It would be weird for them to skip over something as huge as coaster stations, but if they do decide to show this in the next deep dive, literally a couple of days before Planet Coaster 2 is released, I don't know, it doesn't feel like the smartest PR move. Like I said before, I feel like you'd want to get all this info out as soon as you could, to generate more hype. But let's wait and see what happens, I suppose. Either way, I can't wait to get my hands on it and experiment with all it has to offer. So excited. Okay, back to the video. The tent-shaped roof was a bit of a struggle. I downloaded this circus thing from the Steam Workshop just to see how you would create a shape like this. So I used that as a base and then made my own. I started with the largest part and worked my way up. I placed a bunch of curtains and draping curtains around the perimeter of this, since that's what we see in the game. Of course it's not a one-to-one recreation, but it still looks like Rosalina's spaceship, 100%. And I'm not normally one to you know me, I'm normally first to criticise my work, but I will say I am genuinely quite proud of how this is going to turn out. I then used some art shapes to make the green spinning circle platform that Mario can jump on to get around the COMET Observatory. I used some fancy looking roof pieces which I believe are from the vintage DLC plaque, but don't quote me on that. as the little thrusters that sit below the spaceship. I forgot to mention I also placed the ball of energy in the centre of the ship with the red ring around it, since that's basically what powers everything. I then turned my attention to the upper part of the ship. I copied the green circle from earlier and made it grey, placing it at the top. This is what Mario runs across to access the garden and the engine room. And just like in the game, it's not a perfect circle, so I deleted some parts of it. Next, I worked on the rest of the tent-like shape. I used the same technique as earlier, but this time I added some lilac coloured art shapes that I knew would create a pattern when I duplicated it and kept rotating it to get this cone shape. I used art pieces and some more vintage pack roofs to get the pointed tip of the spaceship. Later on, you'll see me making various other rings and walkways. They're all for the upper half of the observatory, and a few are actually for the roof that you can see from within the inside. I also added this on the right of the ship, mainly because that's the direction the ride goes. I recreated the library, the red carpet, the little palm tree and the sofas. The majority of it was done using art shapes. The library was just regular wood pieces along with some small details. When I was happy, I began working on the nighttime lighting. A lot of cool blues and light purples. I think it looks great. I'm genuinely quite impressed with myself. I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back. Okay, so next I enclosed the entire area in star panels and added some colourable mist, which can be seen behind the COMET Observatory. And that's basically everything, guys. Before I leave you all with the time lapse, I just wanted to thank you for watching and for your support. There's some cinematic shots at the end, and in the next episode we'll be working on travelling to the centre of the universe before our big showdown with Bowser. But until then, hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!